Thanks for joining us in this Unreal Engine tutorial. We will be continuing with our environments, which we started in our last episode. Let's start by going over to Blueprints, into our Environments folder. What we're going to do to create our next environment, right-click and duplicate that. We're going to take away the cold and turn this into hot, because the cold and hot scripts are going to be basically the same, except we need to raise the temperature. Let's start by renaming our event to raise temperature. And now, instead of subtracting, we are going to add. So grab temperature, hit the plus sign, and we're going to add. It's defaulted to 1. I'm going to go 0.1, and then that's going to put our temperature up here. The other value we need to change here is this. This, instead of -50, will be +50, or whatever your maximum value is, as I explained in the last episode. And then once we've reached that, we skip the addition. It's clamped, so we won't go over 50, and it'll affect our health. The other thing we want to do is affect the post process. So to do that, let's pop over to the viewport. Let's walk into the environment, or float, so we can see what color is going to appear. Remember, this color is going to be mixed with all the other colors of the world, so it's not going to be this deep of a blue. Come over here to color grading global, and this offset here, we're going to change it to 0.1 on red. Drop down the blue to 0, a bit yellowish. Maybe we'll try for a bit more of a red, maybe a 0.05, more of an orange. I'll leave this to your taste, but I'm just going to leave it at that orange for now. I'll drag this tab over. And so this was our cold environment from the last one. Now, because I can't tell when I'm in that environment when I hit play, because I can't see that box, what I'm going to do is grab the floor, which is the original box brush here, and just a cool trick for your world, hit F2 and let's name this to brush underscore floor, so we know what this is meant to be. Now when I drag it over here, I'm holding Alt and dragging on any of the arrows. The snaps are a bit too sensitive, but basically I'm going to go to 5,000. Now that's automatically named itself to floor 2. I don't need it to be that big. Scrolling down here, I'll change this to 500 by 500. Which should be similar to the box. Might not be exact. All right, maybe we'll try 1,000. Put that on the edge, and I'm going to move this guy over here as well, so the box and the floor overlap. So I know when I'm going to be walking into this area. I know that this is going to be the cold area. If you really don't like the fact that these textures don't align, select both textures by holding Control. You'll see here if you selected the surface properly, because it will come up here with this ground grass. Hit the alignment button and go align surface planner, and they will automatically align. So when I click off here, you can't tell they're two different platforms. But what I'm going to do is come down to materials. I'm going to right click, duplicate this material, and I'm going to call it white. Entering the material. I'm going to hit 1 on green and 1 on blue over here on the left-hand panel for this 3-grade color node. I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to drag that white material there, so I know what's going to happen when I walk into that environment. Now let's duplicate that process. Because the snaps are very sensitive, I'm going to come over here. We're going to jump by 1,000. And I'm going to Alt drag this to the other side. Then I'm going to come up to Blueprints, Environments, Environment Hot. It's going to snap to the nearest grid value according to this. I actually want it to be 500 so that I get the whole environment captured. So just like that. Then we move it over here. We're just going to create another color here. Let's duplicate again, and I'll create yellow. You can create a sand simulated color, but this isn't the way you would be doing the materials in the actual game. Zero out the blue. So 1 on red and 1 on green will give you yellow, and I'll drag yellow over here. So now when I hit play, I can see on the left white material that's going to simulate my temperature going down. And we know what happens if I stay here. It's going to drop all the way to -50, and it's going to start affecting my health. But now if I sprint over to the other side, suddenly I'm in a desert, my temperature is rising again. We are now overheating, and when we get to the top, we will be at a critical level which will affect our health. So that's not the only environment I want to do today though, because that was a little bit too easy. We're going to add a water environment. Click on hot, right click and duplicate. And this time we're going to call it B environment water. Now this one's going to be just a bit different. We're going to change this to drop oxygen. We're going to remove temperature here and temperature here. In fact, just to make this easy, I'm going to actually get rid of all of this and we'll just redo it. So far all I've done is change the event. For this particular one, we're going to need to go back to our hero and create that variable. So let's click the plus sign and say oxygen actual. Change that to a float. Hit the plus sign again. Oxygen max. Compile, save. We want oxygen actual to be 100 and oxygen max to be 100 as well. Compile and save that. With those two variables there, let's pop back over to the water environment, get a reference to our hero, drag off of that and type in get oxygen. We want oxygen actual. Then we're going to subtract. We're going to subtract a 0.1. And we're going to plug that into a clamp. I know I didn't need to get rid of it, but it's better if I just get rid of it and explain it. So this is going to be the value. Our minimum is going to be 0, but our maximum is going to be oxygen max. The reason I'm doing this and not just setting it to 100 here is because later on, if I want to give the player the option to increase their oxygen through an upgrade system, then I don't want to have to come back here and reprogram that. Using a maximum value, just like max health, means that every time we upgrade the maximum value, it'll work across all blueprints. Now let's grab that hero reference again and punch in set oxygen actual. Plug the return value into there, and then this executable will go into this branch, and the output of this oxygen actual will go in here into this equals node. We need to set this to 0. So with that done, let's compile and save that. Let's pop over to our HUD, user interface, HUD player. Here we have our overshield. What we're going to do is copy that progress bar and put another one there. We'll expand the vertical box to 75. Progress bar overshield 1, we want to change that to progress bar oxygen. You could have also just dragged in a new progress bar if that's easier. The bindings should be gone. If your bindings aren't gone, we just need to click on bind and get rid of them. And we want to create a binding on %. That binding is going to be reference hero, get oxygen actual, get oxygen max. And just like our get health, we need to divide those values by each other because our progress bar only goes from 0 to 1. So essentially we're working in decimal places. So that's it for this bar. Let's pop back over here. Make sure that the bar is either the top or the bottom, up to you. I'm going to put mine on the top. I can see here that I've forgotten to rename the function. So I'm going to rename this to get oxygen value. And then down to visibility. Let's click on that binding and let's create binding. We want to get our hero reference, get oxygen actual, and get oxygen max. Check to see if they're equal. Drag out of the return value and get select. Plug in the boolean out into the index in. So if our oxygen actual is equal to oxygen max, we want the bar to be hidden. And if it's not, meaning that we're probably out of breath a little bit, now our oxygen needs to come up again, then we want to show it on screen. compile, save that. Now we need to create a zone. I'm just going to drag off another area here. I'll put this one in front of us. Back over to environments. Let's drag our environment water here. Now this is only dealing with the oxygen value itself. This isn't treating water as a volume yet. We're going to come back for that. I just want to be dropping down the oxygen because it's technically an environment where we would take away something that the player would need, such as temperature or oxygen. Let's come down to materials again. We'll right click and duplicate any of the materials. We'll call this blue. I'm going to make this a dark blue. And clicking on water again, let's go to that post process and affect that offset. This time, let's do full blue. If we want to see what that looks like, we'll go into the post process. Again, it's probably not going to be that strong in the world. Drag our blue material here. And one more thing we need to do in the environment. When you play a game, you go swimming, your oxygen drops, but then it raises again. So we're going to do that here. Let's get custom event, raise oxygen. We're going to grab all of this and copy that over. So everything but the effect health, because we don't need to affect the health when we're raising our oxygen. And instead of subtracting, we're going to add to a total of whatever our oxygen max is, in this case 100. We're going to punch in 100 here, and when we hit 100, we want to clear the timer that's running this. This timer is going to be set here. We're going to set timer by event, plug that into true. So we clear this timer. Then we set this timer over here to bring our oxygen back up, 0.1, and looping. And then we'll clear and invalidate that timer by handle, like so, once we've hit true here. So we're essentially doing the same thing, but in reverse. And with that done, let's compile and save that and see if that's working. In our test map, let's walk up to the front. And now we are in water. One thing I forgot to do is change the color of that bar. So I'll change that. And also that's not really dropping very fast. So I want to drop that down a bit faster. So this is how I would do that. I would go over here and I would increase the value that I'm dropping. Let's try 0.25. See if that looks good. And in this case, I forgot to change this value, so it's a good thing we came back. I'm also going to raise it by a little bit more. Compile, save that. Over to our HUD. Back to the designer with the oxygen progress bar selected. For this, I'm going to do a light blue. So we'll zero out the red, add 1 to the green, and there is our light blue. Compile, save that. Hit play. Run up to the front. Our oxygen is dropping. It could still be a little bit faster, but you guys know how to adjust that now, so I'm going to leave that to you. And I'll just fast forward my footage for now. Now I've dropped and I'm starting to take health damage. You could also increase the amount of health damage you take, but when I walk out of this zone, now the oxygen starts refilling, thus simulating your character getting his breath back. And so long as everything works, once that bar fills up again, it should disappear. There it is. Our oxygen is full, our bar's disappeared, we're all good to go. So we've got a cold environment, a water environment, and a hot environment. Next time we'll do a toxicity environment, I promise. I know I said it in the last episode and this episode. But we'll do that one, and we'll do some other more complicated environments. So I will see you guys in that episode.